he's a madman at times. How he doesn't get sent off more. It wasn't necessarily about Isak wanting to move to Liverpool. That was the issue. It was the way that he went about it. That's a bit of an issue. We would just have to hope from a Newcastle point of view that Waldemar does once again refine his goal scoring form.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
A very good afternoon and welcome to this Friday edition of the Blood Red podcast, brought to you from the Liverpool Echo offices in the heart of the city centre. We've got a very, very special edition for you today, with Liverpool set to face Newcastle United at Anfield at the ridiculous time of 8 o'clock on a Saturday evening. We've got a special guest with us today to discuss the match. I thought we'd try and get hold of one of the shining lights of Newcastle, one of their most favoured sons, but unfortunately Jimmy Nail, Gaza and Jeff from Biker Grove were all unavailable, so we've managed to bring in the host of the Everything is Black and White podcast from Chronicle Live. It's Andrew Musgrove. Andrew, welcome to the Blood Red podcast.
What a lovely introduction. I might have to cut this guest appearance short after that.
I mean, you went a distance fourth behind Jeff from Biker Grove. You're in some esteemed company there, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Jeff. When he passed away in Biker Grove, I think I was one of many hearts that were broken that day.
Incredible acting. Maybe you could sort of replicate his moustache in years to come.
Well, this is like a decade's effort, this, so it might take us a while to get to his efforts.
Well, keep up the good work. So, thanks for coming on the show. Anyway, you are officially behind enemy lines now. I hope you wiped your feet on the way in. But I've got a bit of a crunch clash on our hands on Saturday evening, which has took on a bit more importance for Liverpool, even if it wasn't already important, after losing to Bournemouth at the weekend in what has become typical last-minute fashion, unfortunately, for the Reds. But a quick look at the league table sees Liverpool now outside the top four in sixth, and breathing down the necks are Newcastle, who can actually go above Liverpool with a win at Anfield on Saturday. I guess my first question for you really is, what are your own thoughts around the match and how confident are you?
I wouldn't say I'm confident, but I'm certainly not fearing a trip to Anfield like I have done in previous years. It seems to have lost its fear factor slightly. So I'm looking forward to the game. On paper, Liverpool have got a better squad. They've got higher expectations. And they'll be favourites. They're at home, of course. They're at Anfield. But looking at the domestic form of late, some of the injuries, especially at full-back, I'm optimistic about this one. I think if Newcastle United can replicate what they did in Paris in midweek, okay, they only got a draw, but they should have won that, and that's against the best side in Europe, then Liverpool are going to be in for a tough test on Saturday evening.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an intriguing matchup, and obviously down the years, there's been plenty of classic matches between the two sides. I won't reel them all off. I'm sure I can mention many. A lot of them have fallen in Liverpool's favour, but not all. But obviously, the most recent one was a last gasp winner at St James's Park with a young Rio Ngamoa announcing himself to the Premier League. But it's fair to say, although Liverpool started the season with a string of wins, things haven't exactly gone as planned. For the Reds, they've had very indifferent form and not had a settled side with a lot of new signings that have took a while to settle in. But from a Newcastle perspective, what's the season been like for you so far? Because it feels like obviously expectation, looking from the outside in, expectation has risen. But at the same time, with that comes the pressure of having to deliver. And from what I can see, it's been a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, I don't think it's too dissimilar to what Liverpool are experiencing. Obviously, at the start of the season, the expectations would have been vastly different. Liverpool would have been aiming for the title, and Newcastle would have been aiming just to get back into the Champions League spaces for next season. And what we've seen is that in Europe, I think it's fair to say both sides have found it comfortable. Newcastle, unfortunately, just missing out on the top eight, and now have a lovely trip to Qarabag to contend with next month. But in Europe, they found it, I'd say, relatively easy, comfortable. but they haven't been able to replicate that form in the Premier League. And that's something we've seen with Liverpool, especially in January and towards the back end, October, November time, and wasn't it, when you went on that winless run. So I think the two teams are going through something a little bit similar. Newcastle United are just so poor on the road, and that will give Liverpool fans a big hope that they can pick up 3 points against Newcastle. But hopefully, like I say, what we saw on Wednesday in Paris, which is an awful place to travel to, it's an intimidating arena to play in, and Newcastle United would have headed back to Tyneside feeling like they should have got more than a point and actually should be having a couple of weeks off in February rather than now planning this big long travel to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, the good news is, based on what I saw from Qarabag in midweek at Anfield, I would, if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd be feeling confident about being able to do a number on them over 2 legs. I'm not quite sure how it would be over there, but certainly at home they didn't really offer too much resistance, and obviously, as you will have seen, Liverpool were able to sort of run away with a 6-0 victory. I guess the good news from a Magpies point of view, though, is Liverpool doing well in the Champions League has not automatically translated into doing well in the Premier League, for the number of disappointing draws and an even more disappointing defeat to Bournemouth at the weekend. So you never really know what you're going to get at the moment, and being at Anfield doesn't seem to make any difference in that respect. One player who obviously won't be involved is Alexander Isak, who's out injured. You don't need me to tell you they obviously left St James's Park under pretty disagreeable circumstances, shall we say, in the summer. But time moves on in football, and he won't be involved at all. But what is the general feeling around the Newcastle fan base at the moment about that transfer? And obviously people were very angry at the time, but have they moved on for it?
Yeah, I think so. It's just football. And as I said, back when it was happening to Ian Doyle, it wasn't necessarily about Isak wanting to move to Liverpool. That was the issue. It was the way that he went about it. I don't think anyone begrudged the fact that he had an opportunity to go to a side that automatically you would think would be in a title chase. It hasn't happened this season, but you could see why he wanted to go to Liverpool, because they are always, or should be always, within a shout of winning the biggest and best titles. And for Newcastle United right now, that's not where the club is at. But there's a way to handle yourself, and there's a way to go about it, and posting statements and what you could say are false claims on social media. It's just they're not the way to go about it. Refusing to train, being disruptive influence. There are better ways to get the move that you want. So that was what angered Newcastle United fans. But look, we got a good price for him. A few questions and a few doubts to whether we actually spent the money in the right way. The players that Newcastle United have signed haven't yet probably lived up to the price tag. Voldemort has started really well, but he's tailed off. Wissa was injured, and Jacob Ramsey and Anthony Elanga, and we're seeing glimpses, but we haven't yet seen them at their best. So that will probably have to come until the end of the season, when we can make a full judgment on whether they spent the Isak money wisely. But yeah, they're over it, and you will get some fans celebrating is probably not the word I'd want to use, but joyful at his current situation. But I think the majority of Newcastle United fans maybe don't wish him well in terms of bagging lots of goals, but certainly don't wish him injured or anything like that. It's just football, and players move on. The club will always be there, and players will always come and always go.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. One of my sort of issues with the signing of Isak was not so much the actual signing of him, because he was definitely someone I wanted Liverpool to sign. I'd seen he'd done such a great job with Newcastle, and he'd come into the club at the same time that Liverpool had signed Darwin Núñez pretty much, and it very much looked like to me that Newcastle had got the better deal there. But he arrived at Liverpool having had no pre-season, so he was already behind the curve there. Then he was picking up niggly injuries, and it took him a while to get going. Then eventually got going, and then has obviously suffered an unfortunate injury. So he's not been able to start in the way that we perhaps would have would have hoped he would have, but that has been somewhat offset by another Newcastle target that Liverpool took before Isak, that was Hugo Ekitike. He is someone who has hit the ground running. I did compare his goal-scoring record against Nick Woltemade. He's a little bit ahead of him. He's got 8 Premier League goals. I think Woltemede's got 7, and a few more out in the cup competitions as well. But is he a player that you're disappointed to have missed out on, and one that you consider as a big danger going into Saturday?
Oh, it's a huge danger. He's an absolute talent, isn't he? And I think eyebrows were raised when Liverpool actually went ahead and signed Isak, having already signed Ekitike. He's such a good player. Newcastle United will have to be so switched on to stop him. Yeah, of course, gutted that he didn't end up on Tyneside. It wasn't the first time he'd rejected Newcastle's advances, but again, it goes back to why he's wanting to leave Newcastle. Perhaps when you consider where the two clubs are on their respective journeys, Liverpool are chapters ahead in the book. So it's understandable somewhat, both in terms of aspirations and realistic ambitions, but also, the wages that Liverpool can offer are something else compared to what Newcastle United can offer. So no surprise maybe that he did head to Liverpool instead of Newcastle United. And just hopefully on Saturday, the likes of Dan Burn and Sven Botman and Malik Thiaw can keep him quiet.
Yeah, in terms of Woltemade then, how popular has he become with the Newcastle fans? Because obviously he effectively came in as Isak's replacement in the end. Perhaps not exactly the same player, but one that I guess with his stature, it still suits the way that Newcastle like to try and get the ball in from the flanks. How have fans taken to him?
Yeah, fans have loved him, and he's taken to the public here. It's a very difficult place sometimes to arrive, especially when you're a young man coming from another country. Your first real big move, it can be daunting, but he's taken to it like a duck to water, really, and he's really embraced it, which is half the battle. If you do that, it's a bit like Liverpool, I guess. If you kind of accept everything that comes with playing for a club where the fans are so passionate, you can't walk down the street for a bottle of milk without getting stopped for an autograph or a photograph. If you can accept that and embrace it, then that's half the job done. In terms of on the pitch, there's a little bit of debate to whether he is that out-and-out striker that Newcastle United need to replace Alexander Isak, simply because he likes to drop deep. He likes to hold onto the ball and bring others into play. For his height, he's not exactly the best in the air, which is a little bit of an issue. I think Wissa's more the Alexander Isak type of player, someone who can run into the channels and can stretch the back line and can hang on the last man. Whereas if you look at the average position maps for Valdemore's games, he's most often found very, very deep, and that has stunted Newcastle's development and progress this season. And it's difficult because they've lost Isak and didn't really have too much time to find the right replacement that got that sort of with Wissa, but he went through a similar journey to Isak, not having a pre-season, and then he unfortunately picked up an injury in that September international break, and has only come back, scored his first goal in November in the Qarabag Cup against Fulham. So that shows you how long it's taken him to get to grips with it. He's probably still not match fit, which is the issue. So that's not helped Voldemort in terms of, Eddie Howe had no option. He had to play him. And that might sound daft considering he cost 70 million quid, but Eddie Howe likes to always take his time with new players. Bruno Guimaraes, our captain, arguably our most important player, didn't play for the first 6 weeks, 2 months nearly, because Eddie Howe just took his time. And eventually he came into the side and we haven't looked back since, but that's what Eddie Howe likes to do, and that's not what he's been able to do. And I think that has probably meant that Voldemort has started quite quickly, but he's only scored, I think, 3 in his last 20. So that shows you that things have tailed off, and now it's about trying to get him back into form. He's a superb player. His footwork is fantastic for a tall man, but it's whether the system suits him. And I think the majority of Newcastle United fans at this point in time don't believe it does. But Eddie Howe hasn't got the time to change that system because there's not enough time in between games. I mean, you guys will know the calendar's full of games. When you get the chance to go on the training pitch and change your entire system, you don't. You have a couple of days here or there to run around and just get the players recuperated. You can't make wholesale changes. So that's a bit of an issue. And, we would just have to hope from a Newcastle point of view that Voldemort does once again refine his goal-scoring form.
I'm pleased you've educated me on how to pronounce his name correctly there as well, because I think I made a bit of a hatchet job of that earlier. So thank you for that. You're probably aware Liverpool have got a little bit of a crisis at right back at the moment. They've got no Conor Bradley. Jeremy Frimpong pulled up injured midweek. Joe Gomez is still out. So they're a bit low on options there. I'm expecting a bigger test from Newcastle down that flank than they probably got from Qarabag in midweek. What is the form of Anthony Gordon like at the moment? And is he the man that could be the key to creating the biggest threat to Liverpool in this match?
His form in the Premier League is absolutely shocking. Like, it's absolutely dire. He's gone more than a year without scoring from open play. He can score penalties, no problem. Fantastic. But he just doesn't look the player of a couple of years ago. And I actually think if he doesn't step up, his place in the England squad is probably in jeopardy because there's other wingers in good form. Saturday's going to be interesting with the team sheet because against PSG, Eddie Howe went with 3 at the back, 2 full-backs, which has kind of been his other formation. We don't see it too often. We've seen it in the semi-final against Arsenal. We actually saw it in the final, I think, as well against you guys when we won the Carabao Cup. But
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can remember the day. I can't remember that much else other than the celebrations. But on Wednesday, he had Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes on the bench, and it's going to be really intriguing to see whether he sticks with the formation, which I would do because I think having 3 at the back with the 2 full-backs probably suits Newcastle away at Anfield. It means they're going to have the majority of the ball. Newcastle can just invite them on, hopefully stop them and then hit them on the counter. But does he leave Anthony Lang and Joe Willock as the kind of 2 other men other than the 2 centre midfielders, or does he bring in his 2 most dangerous wingers and Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon? And I'm not really sure what he's going to do. If it was me, I would play the same team that started on Wednesday, maybe other than Voldemort for Wissa. And if Bruno's fit, bring Bruno back in, but that's doubtful as well. But in terms of the wide, well, this is the problem. They weren't even playing wide. They were playing much narrower than usual. My only other viewpoint on that is that you look at the injuries you have at fullback, and it's like, if you're a Premier League manager, then surely you see that as Liverpool's main weakness. That's where they're vulnerable. And then do you actually say, well, actually, we've got 2 really good wingers here who, when they are on form, are brilliant, and they could actually really give your first choice fullbacks a test, let alone your, what will it be, 3rd, 4th choice. So I don't know, it's a flip of a coin. Part of me says play your best wingers to attack that vulnerability, but the other part of me says, well, actually, the way you went on Wednesday, it worked really well against one of the best sides in Europe. So do you not just stick with that? I mean, that's where Howe gets paid the big bucks, I guess.
Yeah, and it is tricky sort of flip-flopping between the Premier League and the Champions League, particularly this season, where the style of play in the Premier League seems to have had something of a step change. And a lot of teams have moved away from the sort of the Guardiola model and gone with a bit more of a direct form of football. And that's been something that Liverpool have really struggled with right the way through the season. They're quite used to having a lot of possession. Unfortunately, the ball hasn't been moved really quick enough when they've had that possession, and when they get to their opponent's penalty area, they've not always delivered the goods, and at the same time leaked a few at the other end as well. So one of the things I've been a little concerned about with facing Newcastle has actually been sort of the quality of the players that they've got in midfield and the robustness of them. And do you think there's I know you talked a bit about the wingers there, but do you think there's a bit of a temptation for Eddie Howe to look at how some other teams have had successes against Liverpool this season and try and make it a bit of a dogfight? Yeah,
but then it depends on the personnel. And if you talk about dogfight, then the people you want in the trenches, Bruno, Joelinton will definitely be missing this game. He's got a groin injury. Bruno is touch and go. He's on the bench on Wednesday, but he wasn't deemed fit enough to come off it. Eddie Howe says he'll face another late fitness test ahead of the game on Saturday. So if both those are missing, then you've lost your kind of warriors in the middle. And then you're looking at more technical players. And that's, I mean, don't get me wrong, Bruno is actually, he's technically gifted. He's one of the greatest passers of the ball I've seen, but he also brings that fight and that passion. And the likes of Sandro Tonali doesn't really have that kind of passion and fight about him. Very, very good player. But, Bruno is just he's a madman at times. He's how he doesn't get sent off more really surprises me, because he's arguably Newcastle's most important player, but he's also arguably the weak link as well. Because if you've got a player who can wind him up and press his buttons, then Bruno and Joelinton are easily targeted in that regard. But without them, you're then looking at the likes of Jacob Ramsey, who is getting better every single week, and he performed really well against PSG. Really good on the ball, controlled, picking the right pass. The criticism as he gets into the final third is that he sort of panics and his legs turn to jelly, and that's got to improve, because obviously against a team like Liverpool, the chances are going to probably be a few. So if you do get in the right position, you've got to be confident and take that shot, and hopefully we'll see more of that from him. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, because if he goes with a midfield 2, then I do worry about Newcastle's midfield getting overrun. But then the hope is that that's because he's effectively got 5 at the back. So you'd think they should be protected. But the biggest weakness for Newcastle is the space between the midfield and the defence. And even with the midfield 3, nearly every single team they've played this season has found success in just popping like a number 10 in that gap. And Newcastle, for whatever reason, are not switched on. And again, we saw it against PSG on Wednesday, the goal they scored. You had 3 PSG players unmarked on the edge of the box. And Tonali was the only midfielder who came to shot of the camera as Vitinha hit the ball into the back of the net. And that has happened consistently. It doesn't matter whether it's PSG or if it's Wolves or if it's whoever. It doesn't matter about the ability of the opposition. They've always managed to exploit that space that I'm talking about, and that's been a real frustration of mine. And if they afford Liverpool that space on Saturday, then I think that's where Liverpool will get their best chance of hurting Newcastle.
Well, based on what you've just said, then I think I might know the answer to my next question. But we've already talked about Ekitike and the danger he brings. But is there anywhere else in particular where you think Liverpool could be a significant threat to Newcastle, or any player in particular that you're worried about?
I'm intrigued by the Mo Salah saga. Obviously, your viewers and listeners don't want to go over all the ground, but him scoring in midweek, I'm just intrigued to see what happens next. Like, is it water under the bridge and everything's rose and everything's fine, at least till the end of the season? He's going to be rejuvenated, and is he going to be maybe the player that kickstarts Liverpool's Premier League campaign? I mean, what a headline that would be. And then does that start on Saturday? Look, he's always a danger, isn't he? So I'm intrigued by him. Obviously, like we say, Ekitike is probably the main one to watch. But you could pick several players, even with the injuries, that you've got to watch out for. And it's, from a Newcastle point of view, about being switched on, following your men, tracking them, and just not giving Liverpool an advantage like, oh, here's the space to run into. Because if we do that, then, like I say, you could pick one of several just to kind of have his first goal scorer.
Yeah, and I'm thinking as well with that sort of little space in between the midfield and defence. Florian Wirtz is a player who's really started to come into form now for Liverpool, and I've got a feeling he's going to start this game on the left for Liverpool. But if they have done the homework, then, and based on what you've said there, maybe they'll move him into a more natural number 10 position. And if he can pick up balls in that pocket of space, he's already proven he can be deadly in that respect. Liverpool and Newcastle coaches, of course, will be exchanging messages, trying to work out their tactics. Not with each other, obviously. That would be tactical suicide. If they are exchanging messages, they might want to do it over a secure internet connection. And I'm sure you'd agree, Andrew, if you're going to do that, you'd probably want to use a good VPN. Probably one like NordVPN, the sponsor of the Blood Red podcast. To get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in in the podcast episode description box below. What represents a good result for Newcastle at Liverpool, at Anfield rather, against Liverpool on Saturday, Andrew? And finally, what is your actual own prediction for the match?
I think if on any other fixture between these two clubs, a point would always be good for Newcastle United. They haven't won there since 1994. It is a horrible hunting ground for Newcastle United. They have zero success. But Newcastle have had that at Old Trafford. They've had that against Tottenham at White Hart Lane and the new stadium. And they've gotten rid of those records. They had it at the Emirates. Don't want to mention the Qarabag Cup again, but I will do the semi-final. They hadn't won in London, I think, since 2001. And they went there and deservedly won in that first leg of the semi-final. So Eddie Howe has managed to slowly but surely chalk off the grounds where Newcastle have had a horrendous time of it. That being said, Liverpool is one of his sides that he just can't seem to get the better of, other than, of course, in the final. So, look, if I'm being sensible, if I'm going with my head, then a point is obviously something we take. And if you offered it me now, I would do. However, are you going to get a better chance to end that horrible record? Are you going to get a better chance to beat Liverpool than now in the Premier League? I don't think you are. I'm sure your viewers and listeners might correct me, and you may as well. You guys aren't sitting there, I would imagine, thinking, oh, Graham, we've just beaten Qarabag 6-0. This means, we're going to ride in on Saturday full of confidence, because
definitely not.
Yeah, and because like Newcastle, we saw them beat PSV 3-0, and then it was Aston Villa next up at St James's Park, and nearly every Newcastle United fan was like, great performance in Europe, cleared them off the park, but then we're back to the Premier League where we're just so up and down. It's hard to predict. So I just think I'm thinking with my heart now, it's the perfect time to go at Liverpool and try and get this win. And also with the congestion in the table, where a point normally would be a good result, like if you don't get a win, suddenly you could be out, forget the race for the top 4, top 5, you could be out of the top 10. You know what I mean? It's that close. So you've got that to play with as well. It's not just about, getting a good point. It's actually looking at what happens if you don't win. So I said on our match preview that history is there to be rewritten, and I think Newcastle United are going to win by a goal here or there, so 2-1, 1-0. It does depend on the formation he plays. If he goes 5 at the back, 3 centre-backs, 2 wing-backs, then I'll be a lot more confident. If he goes back to his tried and tested of kind of a 4-3-2-1, then I'll be backing Liverpool probably to win it. But heart says a win for Newcastle. Head says I'll take a point, but I'm still backing Liverpool as favourites. Is that kind of, I don't know about, does that count as sitting on the fence?
I think that is the great fence of China you've just built there, Andrew. Covered all the bases, I think, but I guess you're saying that it could go one of many ways. I do rib you a little bit there, but I'm kind of in the same boat with you. Any sort of result is possible here with Liverpool. I think the way they're playing at the moment, a big win midweek certainly doesn't mean you're going to go and get results in the Premier League at home to Newcastle. This
is it, isn't it? Like, essentially what it is, it's 2 inconsistent teams in the Premier League. Like that's the bottom line. So we could sit here and we could talk right up until 8 p.m. on Saturday, trying to pick apart this game and how it's going to go. But neither fan of either side knows which version of their side are going to turn up, because it's just been one of those seasons where you think they should win a game, they don't. They think you should be in good confidence, and they're not. And then anything could happen. VAR could be the usual nonsense it is. It's just really hard to predict. It's just, we talk about how drab the season's been in terms of style, but I tell you what, if you've got no runners in this race, the Premier League right now is one for the neutral, isn't it? And I think when it comes to predicting games, I think that's the kind of the biggest thing you've got to take into it when you try and predict the score.
That's one of the reasons I'm not a betting man, and also hasn't really made for a particularly good title defence for Liverpool either. So there's a few variables that probably haven't gone in our favour from a red perspective. in terms of a prediction myself, I kind of my initial thoughts were, although they've beaten Qarabag, after that Bournemouth showing last week, I'm not convinced that a tough Newcastle side are going to be easy to break down, and I kind of sat with a draw. At the same time, though, I do feel like Arne Slot said today, they can't afford more mistakes. I certainly agree with that. It doesn't mean I don't think they won't make any, and I'm concerned about the right-back situation. But somewhere down the line, this has got to change for Liverpool. And my hope is the form of Ekatike and Wirtz in particular can bring home a Liverpool win. So if they get beat, I'm not looking forward to next week's podcast, I'll be honest with you. But we'll see what happens. Are you going to the game yourself on Saturday, or have you been spared the journey?
No, we're expecting our second child any time now, so I might not even get to watch the game on whatever wonderful TV channel it's on.
So we're very lucky to even have you here while your partner is busy trying to get a baby else. So that in itself is requires a tactical masterclass. So best of luck to it.
Just to be clear, she's not at the hospital now, and I've not left her to come on the podcast. The baby is still yet to reach its due date. So just to put that out there.
Excellent. And you've done this all before, Andrew, of course. So you know what you're doing now. So, well, congratulations in advance. Best of luck with that. That's far more important than whether Newcastle win Anfield on Saturday or not. And with that in mind, hopefully they don't. But listen, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Yeah, and enjoy the game, and best of luck over the next few weeks when you get back into the real midfield dirty work of changing nappies and sleepless nights. That's Andrew Musgrove, the host of the Everything is Black and White podcast, who's joined us today. That's all today on the Blood Red podcast. I've been your host, Richard Garnett. We'll, as usual, on the Echo, we'll have live blog and instant reaction from Liverpool's game against Newcastle in the Premier League on Saturday evening. I'll be there in the cop. If you're there, say hello. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
You've been listening to the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.